So, this funny man right here has made a silly little video about how the new heroes rank in like a tier list and how he thinks the heroes are ranked right now. Of course, he's incredibly wrong about everything because he is British, and that automatically means he is terrible at video games. Because the British are not skilled at anything, truly skill issue. So yeah, I will be reacting to this video. I've already done this reaction once, I've already recorded this once, but the raw file was 2 hours long and I cannot be having that. So I dumped it in the trash and I will be doing it again, because why not? It's fun. And now my thoughts are more organized and I already kind of know what's coming, so I don't get extensively mad about 3 specific heroes. Surely. So yeah, let's just get right into it.
And welcome to a video style I haven't done in quite a while, and that's a tier list because we got 2 brand new heroes, and I think it's time we talk about them and we revisit the heroes since last time I did this, which was I think before the flag was even a thing. So this should be all the heroes. We're gonna go through all of them. I'm gonna have some hot takes because I've got some hot takes on them, and yeah, let's kind of figure it out. So if you like this video, do consider leaving a like, and if you disagree with me, let me know and I'll tell you why you're wrong. So, you know, just gotta put that out there. All right, so let's get into this. First hero in the list, the bounty hunter. Where does this guy go? A lot of people hate him, a lot of people like him, but I have to agree, the longer that I've had access to him, that while I think he is a really fun hero and very cool to play, I just don't pick him that often. I don't think it has anything to do against his kit. I just think I generally only pick him when I need to snipe a lair boss, and I just like, maybe I'm like, oh, I really want to go to the sprawl, but I don't have a great team for it. I don't have that back rank damage. Like, no, bounty hunter's here. Cool, I'll just pop him in and we'll take care of it. But like outside of doing that, like I don't really find much need besides just like I don't want to get a bad relationship, or I want to snipe a lair boss, or I'm just feeling a little frisky. So I think his kit is really fun, and I think his design is amazing, and I think overall he's actually a really fun, powerful hero. Like he's super, like he's strong. I'm gonna put him in like C tier.
I honestly think this is a pretty base take. Bounty Hunter is, in my opinion as well, just not good. It's not so much that he's like bad as like a hero. Like he already said that his kit is actually incredible. You get 2 non-setup stuns, and you get obviously incredible damage, especially early on. But the issue is, it's kind of like a design mistake with Bounty Hunter, where you really build your team to work as a team. Then you just have Bounty Hunter come in. And very often, especially when you get further into the game, when you get better, you really want to build specific teams around specific gimmicks. Like you want, for example, rank 4 Leper with Intermediate Jester, for example. Bounty Hunter can't fit on a team because every hero on that team is specifically picked for that team to work. And that's kind of the issue with Bounty Hunter. If you just run him as like if you just run like a team that has 4 heroes that all basically just work by themselves, and they don't have any synergy between them, then you can very easily start in Bounty Hunter, which is basically what happens early on when you are a relatively new player and you don't know all the heroes yet. Because then you kind of don't build around very specific gimmicks, like, for example, Leper. Leper is a good example. When you pick Leper and you want to specifically build them for damage, you will pick a team based around Leper. And Bounty Hunter often just doesn't fit into a team because every other hero on that team specifically builds towards that specific goal. But if you have like just a good team where like you have Mad Arms, you have Highwayman, you have Jester, you have PD, you can just take Highwayman, throw him out, take Bounty Hunter, and you will most likely be fine, right? So if your team is very or has heroes that you can just kind of take out and slot in Bounty Hunter, then he's very good. But that just doesn't happen when you really play a lot of the game, and that's kind of like the bias of like more experienced players, I think. Where Bounty Hunter, you just stop taking him because you want to play the teams you specifically built, and Bounty Hunter doesn't allow you to do that. So that's why I think Bounty Hunter is always gonna be in that state, because that's the design behind him. You pick him as you have the whole recruitment mechanic, and that's always gonna disrupt your team. And no matter how strong you make him, that's still gonna be an issue. So like you can't buff him. I don't think you should buff him. You don't change him. He's always gonna be that way, and that's also why I think like ranking him just based on like, oh yeah, how powerful he is and all of that, it just doesn't work. And that's why I think you should exclude Bounty Hunter from basically every hero ranking tier list, because you can't judge him against all the other heroes, because you don't build a team with him in mind, so the fun factor is a lot lower, and you can't rank him on a strength level because he's only there for one region. So I don't think that's ranking Bounty Hunter is a good idea, in my opinion.
I just never used the guy. Sorry, bud. I don't want to tell you. You know, maybe if you didn't take so many of my candles. So yeah, I just wish that I don't dislike the hiring mechanic. I don't know. I just wish there was something a bit more of a reason to take him. Maybe if there was some like passive buff to your party the next region or so. I don't know. I just want like something that really grabs me about taking him. And besides him just being strong, that doesn't seem to be enough. And that just may be my personal thing. I'm sure some people pick him every time and they love playing him. So whatever the case is, I think he's a C tier hero at that rate. So that's what I'm gonna do. I think last time I placed him like S tier because he was just really strong, which he is. But you know, strength isn't everything. And speaking of strength not being everything, we've got Grave Robber. So Shuffle, if you're watching this, turn off the video. And if you're anybody else, we're gonna go ahead and put her in D tier. No, I'm kidding. Grave Robber is, I think, one of those heroes that has grown on me, kind of the opposite of Bounty Hunter. I kind of started off with like, yeah, she's okay. They recently just buffed Repartee, if you didn't see that today. So that patch note came out today where Repartee doesn't require you to be stealthed anymore, but it gives you additional buffs if you are stealthed when you go into it. And like, then it has some additional buffs for giving you more crit if you dodge attacks and stuff like that. So I think Grave Robber feels really good right now. I think she puts out solid damage. I think she's rank flexible. She's got good survivability. She can get good enough crit rate to keep her stress down. She can ignore a lot of tokens, which as we get more enemies and more things added to the game, like being able to ignore block tokens, dodge tokens, guard tokens, I think she could ignore pretty much every token in the game outside of herself being blind, is pretty dang cool, and is very, very useful. She really works in a lot of cases. Yes, she's pretty squishy. Yes, I think her paths maybe need a little rework. Even then, I don't think they need that much rework. Hi, Cat. Everybody say hi to Nox. Nox wants to be in the video.
Yo,
now you
Cat.
gotta go away, buddy. Sorry.
The best part. Better than his opinions. I don't care about his opinions.
I'm gonna keep that in the video for posterity's point. I'm not editing this video, that's why. So I think she's really good. I don't think she's like the best hero in the game, but I think on a scale, like, I will gladly take her. She fits in a lot of teams for me. I think her paths are really fun. Nightsworn's fun. Venom Drop is super fun. I don't even remember what her other path is because I never play it. Yeah, those two paths.
Yeah, well, Grave Robber right now, from a fun point, I definitely think Nightsworn is S tier. Personally, Nightsworn is probably like my favorite path in the game because have you looked at the thing? It's so fun to play and build teams around. So that's why I think Nightsworn is actually fine. Nightsworn is the only path I think with Grave Robber that's actually good, and I don't think you should touch Nightsworn too much. The only thing I want to see for Nightsworn is that it buffs Pig somehow. Please, Pig needs a buff, and Nightsworn is like the perfect place for that, because right now you just end up running Glint in the Dark always because it's just better. And that's what I want to see, but otherwise, like, Nightsworn doesn't need anything. It is fragile, obviously, but you get such a big payoff from like all the stealth stuff, especially when you build around it. If you have like a Jester on rank 4 and you start on rank 1. So you can do Fade into Lunge on turn 1, and when you master this is just hitting for like 10 to 20 instantly, and you ignore everything. That's incredible. Then Chief Deal's really good, and that's probably what he's talking about. I've kind of inducted him into the Grave Robber Nightsworn is a good path cult, because he stole my melee-only team where I really heavily focused on Grave Robber and Nightsworn. So that's fun. But Deadeye and Venom Drop. Deadeye is a better path. Deadeye is just better Venom Drop in my opinion, because Venom Drop barely does anything better in terms of damage. It's like, who cares about all this dot piercing? Who cares? Like, Fade, Pirouette, and Lunge, like, these buffs don't matter. Like, who cares? Literally who? So it's really just Flashing Daggers, which is special because Thrown Dagger is just worse, and Poison Dart is just worse than on Deadeye because it's worse damage if you just look at it. And you obviously lose the -3 speed, and you don't go into stealth with this too much because 2 Blight Delta is not really worth it. especially when you just look at Deadeye and you have incredible damage from Poison Dart, because this deals 7 to 10 damage when mastered. And if you go to Venom Drop and you look at this, it's 5 to 8. That's not good. Even when you take the extra 2 Blight, it's only 7 to 11, and that's not good. And you still lose that minus speed, which makes her way worse, because that often just allows, because higher speed on damage over time heroes allows you to proc the damage over time before the enemy acts, essentially giving extra damage. And if you get outsped, you basically lose a full tick of Blight, which is very bad. That's why Venom Drop really needs help, and that is just a better version, which I think is very bad. Deadeye really needs to lean into more of that physical damage dealing, which is like Thrown Dagger, Flashing Daggers, just on-hit damage. And it should not buff Poison Dart to also deal more damage. That's just bad. And Venom Drop needs to do a lot more for Blight. Just increase the Blight chance on everything. Give extra Blight piercing. That works for basically every damage over time path. Do it here as well. And obviously, a big part of why Grave Robber feels so bad, or to play in like the range paths, is this. 50% crit when the target is comboed. Bro. Me watching Grave Robber hit a combo target and not crit. And just eat the combo. Huh? Like, that feels terrible. Either make it so that if you don't crit, you don't remove the combo, or just make this a guaranteed crit. Like, it's not that hard, and I don't think it's gonna be too strong, because Deadeye Venom Drop are just kind of not that good right now, because they have to compete with basically Highwaymen, because then Grave Robber just becomes like, yup, ideal damage. And that's basically just Highwaymen, and even just a lot of other heroes do that, and they often do it better than Grave Robber, because Grave Robber is so fragile. And that's why I think Grave Robber Night Swan doesn't need any, maybe needs like a small buff, but Deadeye Venom Drop definitely needs some help. Like, these two paths suck, and the playstyle sucks, because it's just hitting stuff, and the combo stuff is still horrible. That's basically what I want to see from Grave Robber. That's why I don't think she's A tier. That's why I think this is a bad take. I think Grave Robber should be like low B, maybe even C tier. Just because of how terrible Deadeye Venom Drop feel. And Night Swan is obviously like my favorite path, so I will rank it higher usually, but it's probably not S tier in terms of strength. It's just like a good path. If you build around it, it's a very good path, but there's a lot of better heroes, in my opinion, than Grave Robber.
Paths are really fun, so we're gonna go with that. All right, next hero, Hellion. I think I'm gonna get some hate for this one. I can't remember where I ranked Hellion before, but I'm not super happy with where Hellion is at right now. I think she is a solid damage dealing hero. I think she has one of the best paths in the game, at least one of the most fun paths in the game, which is Carcass. I think that's like a great example of like a side grade path that's like a different way to play her. It's a subclass of her. I think it was one of the original paths that, like, now we've seen how paths have been developed for recent heroes and how much fun they are and how dynamic they are. I think this is a great example of like what that should be for all the heroes. I just don't find her that great to play, or at least that dynamic to play. She's pretty much locked into rank 1. You can definitely play her rank 2. There are breakthrough plays that you can go through, but they're not fun, in my opinion. They're not enjoyable. I struggle with getting her bleed like path, like her berserker path, to really feel any good, because of the fact that her bleed skills are locked positionally. So like, you want to use bleed out, you got to be in rank 1. If it bleeds, you got to be in rank 2. Like, I can't like get both of them to work, because neither of them are movement abilities either, so they don't like move her back and forth. She does have movement abilities with toe to toe and Howling End, and so maybe you can synergize there. But if I want to focus on her being a bleed dealer, I feel like I'm kind of losing out, and I might as well just run Carcass and just run bleed out at that point to compensate for the lack of damage. I feel like the winded mechanic outside of Carcass is just, it doesn't feel fun. It doesn't like give her any nuance. It's just a straight negative debuff. And I think there should be some like kind of play around with that. Like, if they're going to introduce and give a special token, I feel like there should be more to it that you as the player can kind of like, well, if I don't get rid of them, I can do this, but if I get rid of them, I can use the, I can do the damage. Like, there should be some plays around it. And outside of Carcass, which gives you the benefit of block tokens on being winded, again, that's still very binary. It's very like, you just stack the winded tokens by using, abilities like Yawp or whatever, and just stack them and just keep them there. So that way you're just constantly generating a block. You're never going to try to get rid of them. So again, there's no like plays around it. It's just there, and it just feels kind of bad. And yeah, she does good damage, and she has the ability to hit rank 4 from rank 1, which is a really good ability, and I really like it. But overall, I just think she feels kind of meh right now. Raucous Revelry doesn't feel like a great ability. It feels like a weird button, considering like Adrenaline Rush is a better heal, considering the fact that it wins her, so now she's doing less damage. The stress heal, especially with the fact we've got like Reynold now, you know, we've got Bolster, we've got Jester, we've got even Sahar with her ability on her Instructrice. Is it Instructrice? Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think it's her instructor path that does the stress heal, whichever path it is. You know, we've got plenty of other stress heals and stress healers in the game. Raucous Revelry feels really weak. Bloodlust feels kind of weird. It's better now with the execution, but again, it's hard to get her bleed pass to work very well. And even then, it's still just kind of like a dead button for a turn. I wish it kind of did something else or had more plays to it or just something. I don't know. It's cool when it works out if you've got a bleed team going for you, but otherwise, again, doesn't feel that great. So I'm gonna put her in C tier. And I know
I actually think this is a fair ranking. Her in C tier is actually good, in my opinion. And I would probably rank her there as well, honestly. In terms of strength, actually, I would say she's B. But there's one very big issue with her right now that pushes her down to C for me, and that's just that there's so many better frontliners. If you just look at what other things are available and what she does, you have frontliners, obviously, you have Mad Arms, you have someone like Highwayman who can go there, Leper, Fledge, Crusader, and sometimes even Duelist. It's like, with her, you get, like, if you just go for damage, right? You either get Wicked Hack, Iron Swan, which is like, you get Reach into rank 4, but you can't hit rank 3, and you get decent damage into rank 2, 1 or 2, right? And then you look at someone like Man at Arms. This, 4 to 6 on Crush, 4 to 8 on Wicked Hack. But you also get all of this for like damage. You get Retribution, which is still very good. You get all the defensive utility. You get a counter to every big fight in the game. And it's like, why would you pick her with worse HP, worse defenses over this guy who's just better and counters every fight in the game, right? So the damage path fails at beating Man at Arms, basically. Same thing with Highwayman. If you just want the damage dealer, Highwayman exists. Pick him. He has great reach into any rank. He has utility, and he has the stun on pistol shot. And he crits all the time, so you probably get more consistent damage. Then you have someone like Leper. Leper, he has great potential damage. And the highest point of Leper is basically the highest of damage you can ever get in the game, because chop critting every turn is completely insane. And it's easier to get him there than some of the other setups. Like, obviously, if you have, like, PD and you spam, like, 4 of the fragments you get that apply, like, 10 damage over time for a total of, like, 60 points of blight on him, and then you pop, what her high big damage over time pop, what's it called? Cause of Death, I think? Yeah, Cause of Death, and you just deal, like, 180 damage in one hit, sure. But it's harder to set up than just giving Leper like a crit token. And then Leper just pops off. And same with Flagellant, like he also deals decent damage, at least decent damage. He deals good damage in a few of his paths, and he has also great reach. And it's just that with Hellions damage, it's like you don't have anything special. And in addition to all this, you don't get anything that's exceptional, right? Because aside from like her damage, what do you really get if you play her for damage? Like, you get toe-to-toe kinda? But Taunt and Immobilize, every other, like, Mad Arms can get this, Leper can get this. Do you really care about that too much? And it's like, she doesn't have that much HP. If you do Ravager, obviously she has higher HP. But her damage just doesn't feel that special, and she doesn't offer a lot of other utility in addition to that. And then, when you start to play as like a tank, and as like a dedicated tank, even with Carcass, you always have to think, why didn't I just pick Poet Leper? Because Leper has everything she has with Withstand, probably better because you also get Block Plus. But at the same time, if Leper just finds like a good trinket, you can just say, okay, mid-region, I'm on Poet, I don't care. I'm gonna equip plus 66% crit on Chop, and I'm still gonna crit something for just like 20 damage. And Hellion can't do that on Carcass. If you find like a really good offensive trinket, like if you find Nautical Compass, you don't want to swap Hellion to damage, right? Carcass is still just not that good because you generate a lot of winded, and that means you aren't dealing good damage. But with Leper, like, you just pick Poet, and it's like, okay, I found a lot of good offensive trinkets. I just slapped him on Leper, mid-region, still on Poet. I don't care. The dude's probably hitting more damage than my biggest damage dealer up until this point. That's how good Leper is. And that's why Hellion just kind of falls to the wayside. Like, her tanking on Carcass is very good, but Leper just kind of outclasses that. Because he also has amazing tanking, especially with Poet, because he's healing so much on himself. And he has both Solemnity and Reflection to heal himself for much more than Hellion, in my opinion. And that's why I think Hellion is just, like, not really bad. It's just that every other hero is better than her. And that kind of, like, takes away her space, because, like, if you run Hellion in the front, you're probably giving up something else, and that just kind of makes her, like, not worth it. The one thing I didn't talk about yet is Howling End. Howling End got nerfed extremely hard. And it's continuously declining, in my opinion. It's just not getting any better. Because a lot of other heroes that got added have, like, bigger frontline nukes, and a lot of other heroes got buffed to the point where they have big frontline nukes. So Howling End feels less special, and you have to put a lot into the skill, because you need to have Howling End, you need to have basically toe-to-toe upgraded, and then you can only press this every 4 turns, basically. And that's not great. You basically press this once every combat, and after that it's not dealing to you aren't dealing very good damage with Hellion if you run Howling End. So it's just not worth it. And with how much block and how much dodge is in the game right now, Howling End is just not that great. Because if you miss this or you press this on, like, a block, then you aren't dealing good damage. You aren't consistently killing anything with her in general, because, like, Iron Sworn is never enough to one-tap a backliner unless you crit the 5%. And Wicked Hack is often not enough to one-tap frontliners unless you hit the crit and have the combo. And it's like, that's just not good. There's so many other heroes that offer so much more in terms of utility and have about the same amount of damage they can put out, that Hellion just kind of isn't that great anymore. And that's why I think C is a fair ranking. She needs a buff, in my opinion. In what form that buff comes, I don't know. I just don't know what to do with her. Like, she just needs, like, overall improvement, I guess. And she kind of needs, like, the other heroes to slow down, and the power creep with her has really set in. Because every other frontliner really just has, like, not gotten nerfed too hard. And it's like, with her, she got hit extremely hard right after early access. Because, like, she got Howling End completely nuked. Like, this move used to be extremely good. And I still think if it got reverted, she would be a problem again. Because then this would have a 1-turn cooldown, I think, when upgraded. It didn't move you back, and it pierced block. And I think it even had better damage. And at that point, Howling End was really good, but right now, it's just not. It's just not worth it. I think Hellion is fair, just because of how many better options exist already.
People are going to be really mad about that. I love the Hellion. She's one of my favorite heroes. She's my favorite hero in Darkest Dungeon 1, but I think she's struggling, so I said what I said. Jester. Jester's a really interesting hero. I think he's just solid. I think he's solid overall. I think he does good damage. I think you can play him in some fun ways. Intermezzo is one of the best paths in the game. I will say he is one of the heroes that suffers from one of the like hero plus paths, as I call them, which is Virtuoso, where it's just like the hero but better. I know it has some downsides with the dot stuff, but like that's pretty negligible in my honest opinion. So I mean, he, like I said, good damage. He has good stress healing. He has good movement. He's flexible. He's got a good amount of health. My cat is on my desk again, buddy. You gotta get off, buddy. I'm sorry. You gotta get out of here. So I just think he's really fun. I think he's a solid hero. I think he's a good choice. I maybe wish that there were some more plays with Finale or something, and I don't know, sometimes I feel like his trinkets aren't the best, but overall I still think he's really good. Good crit rate, blah blah blah. I think he's an above average hero. He's not like, I don't think I go like crazy like excited when I play him. I usually just play him because he's just a good hero to have on the team, and he fits a lot of roles and just a solid choice. But I'm never like building a strategy around him. Sometimes I build a strat around Finale or something, but like I don't know, he just doesn't ever feel like the centerpiece of the team. He just feels like a good part for a lot of teams.
Last time I did this, or in my last recording, I talked like about Jester for like an hour. So that's where most of the length came from. So I'm gonna try to keep it short. This take is terrible, in my opinion. Jester's all the way up here. He's probably like the strongest hero in the game right now because Man-at-Arms got nerfed. And the reason for that, like, he touched on a lot of stuff. Jester is just basically very good on every team. And he doesn't feel like the centerpiece of strategies because he's not. He's never the centerpiece, in my opinion. But he supports so many strategies that just work because Jester exists. The first part of his kit and the first playstyle, I think, with Jester, and the reason why I think he's so fun, because he has a lot of varied playstyles and how you can play him. The first one is just backline dancing, which is just you press Razor's Wit, you press Fade to Black, and you apply combo on every target, and like you apply blind. And with this already, you can see a pattern with Jester, where he has very good support, but then he just randomly has some other benefit attached to it that's completely insane. Like with Razor's Wit and Fade to Black, you get a good amount of damage. 3 to 6 into 1 to 3 is not bad. That's basically pistol shot damage. That's exactly pistol shot damage, unless you run sharp shot, obviously. And that's not bad. Especially considering these two are just like kind of like the setup and support moves. Like if these dealt 1 to 2 damage, they would still be good, just because of how much combo they apply. And then they would be more of that like combo appliance thing. But Fade to Black specifically is special because it adds a blind. And this has no cooldown, and that's extremely important for Jester, and the reason why Fade to Black probably needs a nerf, because Fade to Black is the only version of, or like basically the only, or the safest option that any hero has to like continuously apply blind. Because Runaway obviously can do it as well. You have a Smokescreen, but a Smokescreen misses, and you need to master it obviously. But if Smokescreen doesn't stick the 2 blind, you don't get anything, and you have to wait a full turn and essentially get slapped twice, while Jester just says, okay, I missed the first blind, I get slapped once, okay, I can try again. And that's what makes Fade to Black so good, because if this does need Mastery to be a really good defensive button already, just because of the blind, and it also deals good damage, and when mastered, it also sets up other heroes. And that is incredible. Like, the utility in this move alone is enough to pick Jester. And this is the first playstyle, and the other ones are probably better. This is probably like his worst playstyle, in my opinion, where you just sit on the back and like you spam combo. It can be good, obviously, on the right teams. If you just need like a hero to put out insane amounts of combo, you will look towards Jester, and he is the best at that by far, because the other heroes either have like a big one-time use, like Smokescreen, or just have inconsistent combo appliance, like Plague Doctor, or they simply can't apply combo every turn, like Occultist, and they are just not as consistent as Jester with Razor's Wit, Fade to Black. And obviously, Inspiring Tune, I don't think I need to talk about this too much. It's probably the best stress healing in the game because it heals 3 stress, which means you can put your heroes from 5 stress down to 2, and from 6 to 3, which means you get out of that 4 stress breakpoint, which is very helpful. And now the other part is solo finale. This is a big part of why I think he missed Jester so much and why he's so low on this tier list. It's because you aren't using solo finale the right way. Solo finale is just 2 buttons on your hero, and you can run them on any team. Like literally any team, you can run solo finale. And there will be no downside, even when you think like, oh, but I'm gonna move around, right? So like I fuck up my positioning. No, it doesn't matter. If you like, even if you run like, for example, this obviously can't happen, but if you run double leper on the front line, Jester with solo finale is still usable without any downside. For the simple reason that Encore exists. Because what you can do is you upgrade Encore, and with upgrade Encore you don't get the weaken anymore, but you still get the daze, which means turn 1, you press Encore, you daze yourself, then you go on the next turn, you go last, and then you press solo. And what solo allows you to do is just like apply combo, you get a lot of defense, and you get a speed token, which means next turn, you are just gonna go first, and you instantly press finale, and your positions are fixed. He's back in rank 4. Double leper in the front line is just like back in position, and nothing changed because nobody took a turn between like the days of Encore and the speed of solo. And that's why solo finale just works in any team. And solo finale is like, this is insanely good. Like if you just look at this, 6 to 12 with the plus 100%, which you're always getting because you just use solo, you are dealing 12 to 24 damage to any rank. That is insane. Like, please point to the hero who can deal 12 to 24 to any rank without any mastery and without any setup. There's nobody, because nobody has Omni-Reach attacks are extremely rare. Like the other one that exists that's also usable for like big damage is Burning Stars. And if you look at Burning Stars, it's 8 to 16 unupgraded. That's not 12 to 24. And you need to set it up. You can't use it from anywhere. Caretaker of Enring can fuck you over. And obviously you ignore block and you add the combo, but you deal so much less damage, and Jester has the better setup, it's more consistent, and you are dealing more damage. That's why Finale is so good. And that's the huge miss on this list, with Jester not being S tier, because he just has this randomly, and he can just run it alongside like his already good support. Like you can just run Encore, solo Finale, and Inspiring Tune, Razor's Wit. You still get good combo appliance because you still have Razor's Wit, and you still apply a decent amount of combo. You still get the insane utility of Encore, which I think he also missed, because Encore is just the best move in the game, because it is every other move in the game. And Encore essentially allows Jester to have a 15 move kit in a single move, because you get access to all 15 moves on the other 3 heroes at the press of a button. And that allows Jester to have incredible flexibility on any team, and Encore speeds things up so much. Like, Encore is probably one of the best moves, probably the best move in the game, in my opinion. And he also has incredible Omni Reach damage, he has the best stress healing, and he has incredible utility with these two. And the fun part is, he also has additional utility you can use in specific fights. You can use Slice Off to set up heroes if you need it, and destroy multi-action heroes, or multi-action bosses because of the bigger blight, or the bigger bleed. And you also have Play Out, which allows you to counter a very specific fight at the end of the final region, aka Exemplar, because this removes combo when upgraded. So with him, you get a big bunch of utility, you get great damage, you get great stress healing, you get the best move in the game, you get insane flexibility, he fits on every team and makes everything better, you have Virtuoso to push his speed to incredible levels, he's not that fragile as it might seem, because Virtuoso buffs himself by 20% and he generates a lot of defensive tokens, either with Fade to Black applying Blind, or Solo applying Dodge. So you don't really care. Like, Jester is just good on any team. He does extremely well on any team, and he has so much. Like, people were saying, like, oh yeah, Mad Arms has a lot. Jester has almost the same amount, and with Mad Arms not having as much damage anymore, I think Jester is by far the best hero in the game right now. And that's why I think Jester is S tier all the way. He's, in my opinion, very fun to play because you just get to see extreme madness. He supports every playstyle, so he fits on every team, like every dumb strategy. Jester just helps that, because dumb strategies want more turns, they want more survivability, and they want backline damage most of the time, because dumb strategies usually focus on big frontline nukes, which is just something I have seen. So Jester just fills the void on so many dumb teams that he fixes so much. The only thing Jester doesn't fix on your team is healing. If you have any healer, he will make them better, because you get on-demand healing from Encore. And yeah, that's why Jester is by far the best hero. Like, he's S tier all the way.
To kind of keep things going. So I do wish that his like battle ballad and play out skills, I don't know, I don't use them that often. Again, that might just be me, but I just don't find that much use for them outside of his other abilities. Like, Encore is amazing. It's a great...
Yeah, like, Ballad and Play Out, I kind of didn't talk about them. But they are so situational that either you want a team specifically playing around Ballad, which is like, for example, rank 4 Leper, which is a very silly strategy you should try. And Play Out has obviously the utility on Exemplar, which I've already talked about, and their Play Out is really good, because it's essentially a free counter to Exemplar very often, and that's just incredibly helpful. And you don't need it to like be there all the time, but it will be there when you need it. And that's why I think Ballad and Play Out are actually kind of fine. Like, Ballad obviously needs a buff, because it's just worse Play Out in Exemplar fight, because Exemplar can't actually use Fall on rank 4, so you don't need to remove combo on rank 4, but you need to remove combo on the front 3 ranks, so Play Out really does that really well. It also gives that block plus, which can be extremely helpful, so I think Play Out is actually in a fine spot. It's that utility move that you need in a very specific scenario that happens every run, so I think this gets consistent use. But Ballad just doesn't do that yet, so I think Ballad needs a buff. And Harvest Slides Off, obviously, because the bleed moves on him are just kind of bad, which is also something I've noticed with this guy. He just kind of tends to run Harvest and like Slice Off, which are very low value moves compared to, I don't know, 12 to 24 Omni Reach damage. Just pointing that out. And that's why you don't need a team to make Finale work. You just need to press solo at the right time, and then you press Finale instantly the next turn, and you just nuke something for 12 to 24. Like, Finale solo don't need a buff. These two need a nerf. Like, literally, tune down Finale damage, and add, like, a damage buff to, like, some of his other moves. Like, even Battle Ballad. Just say, like, Battle Ballad, give yourself, like, plus 50% Finale damage or something. Something like that, definitely. But solo being that much of a setup move is just insane. It's such a quick setup. Or just remove the speed token from solo. That might already be enough, but probably not. Because Finale is incredible.
Great ability, and it can definitely leverage strategies for other teams and things like that. But I still feel like those other abilities should have a bit more to them, or something more dynamic and fun to them. And the more dead buttons I have, I generally just play like the same way with him. I either play him Virtuoso if I'm feeling kind of frisky, then sure, I'll play the Intermezzo path. But then I'm still not using Battle Ballad and Play Out unless I really need to force a bleed for a Cauterize heal.
Yeah, this again is just a skill issue in my opinion. It's just like bad player Elmo. It's really just like he's not using Solo Finale, which is like an entire separate playstyle, which you also have to kind of learn. And with Jester, you can use all of his moves, except like 3 or 4. Like Slice Off you don't want to use very often, Battle Ballad you don't want to use very often, Harvest you don't want to use very often, but every other move gets at least some use in every run. Because Echoing March is an incredible pull against every Cultist fight. If you have an open slot going into a Cultist fight, if you just have like a move that's like, do I really need this? No. You equip Echoing March. Because Echoing March basically takes like one of the backliners and just destroys them. And if you have the Cultist ladies in the front, that completely destroys them as well, because something is always going to be in front of them, so they have to use a Rush Judgment, which deals terrible damage, instead of like the better attacks. And Play Out, obviously, you have Exemplar, and other stuff I've already kind of talked about, so Jester is extremely flexible as a hero, in terms of like which moves you can pick. And there's only a few ones like Mad Arms, where it's like, oh yeah, you can probably use more moves on him than with Jester, because Mad Arms is like, you can use every move, unless you run Courageous Abandon. If you just you completely ignore Courageous Abandon, and maybe Command, you can just make like a good Mad Arms kit. Like, you can throw any of these moves together and just have like a solid Mad Arms kit. With Jester, it's more like, you kind of have like this core 7, then you have 2 other additional moves that you can use sometimes, and then you have the other 3 that are just bad. That's basically Jester right now, and he's extremely flexible. I don't know what he's getting at. Jester's probably one of the heroes where he can use a lot of moves, and he has probably the most viable playstyles of any hero, in my opinion.
So, yeah. Overall, I think he's a B-tier hero. I think he's really, really good. I think he's in a good place. I just don't think he is not shining for me. Okay. Next, we've got Baldwin, the big boy, the leper. Solid hero, yeah. I think he has some really good abilities. I think a lot of players have finally discovered that Chop is not the best ability in the world, and that his support ability, not his support abilities, but like, Intimidate is a really strong ability. Even though it doesn't feel like it's really strong, it is actually very strong. I think he's got a lot of good buttons. I think, his blind is maybe a little wonky at times. Like, the double blind on start is a little weird. I think his Monarch path still feels weird to me. I know a lot of people really like Monarch. I know it kind of works with the whole meta. I say meta. The kind of strategy of like saving it till the end and switching him to Monarch for the final fights. He does huge amounts of damage. He feels really good when you get him to work, but he is an extremely dependent hero on other heroes doing things, whether that's combo or blind removal or whatever the case is. He needs the team to be built, to work with him. Is that a bad thing? No, it's a game about building teams. But sometimes he can feel like he's a bit of a log that I'm kind of dragging along sometimes. And when he pops off, that's great. Other times I feel like I'm spending like half the fight trying to get him out of this like blind loop or, whatever the case is. He's a great tank. He's a good damage dealer. I just think there are other heroes that are maybe more consistent at doing some of those things. But when he does those things really well, he does them the best, in my opinion. But you just have to get it to work right. So I'm gonna throw him in B tier. I think
I think Leper in B is fair. I would probably put him up in A, even like low A. It's a good space. It's a good place for him in my opinion. It's mainly just because like he doesn't need any changes really to like or like any huge buffs or like huge nerfs. With Leper right now, he is probably the best tank. If you just want a dedicated tank, he's probably the best one because he can put up taunt every turn and he has great defensive utility. Like you pick him, you just put on Poet, and he's not dying. Like you just sit there, you press Withstand, you press Intimidate every turn, you remove tokens, you remove block, you remove strength, you add Weaken. It's incredible. And then when he goes to like low HP, you just press Solemnity once and like he's back up. Because this 33% is from 44, and then you get that extra 50% healing from I think it was 50% healing received. Yeah, 50%. And you just heal an insane amount. Like Leper can just like completely recover through fights, and he just doesn't care. He's probably the best tank because of that. Because Hellion kind of is just worse Leper because you also have that token clear, but at the same time, like you can't omni target, omni remove tokens because you don't have reach. Leper has that with Intimidate, and you don't have the huge recovery, and you don't have the huge prevention with like the block from Withstand. So Hellion just kind of is like worse Leper in terms of tanking right now, in my opinion. Man-at-Arms isn't like really a dedicated tank anymore because you can't taunt every turn, and if you don't upgrade Retribution, you very often just can't taunt very well because you have that 2 cooldown, which is like the big reason why I think like his nerf actually exists. And like Crusader, obviously, but Crusader can't taunt every turn again, and he doesn't have the same self-recovery, I think. He only has this, which has a 2-turn cooldown. Yes, obviously, it's probably a better move for tanking because of the 3 taunt and like all of this, but he feels more like an off tank and not like the dedicated like I take damage because you can't taunt every turn. Flagellant, same thing, more, you can't use it every turn. That's basically where Leper shines as a tank. You can just sit there and spam Intimidate, and when he goes to low HP, just press like the recovery button. Nobody else can really do that as well as he does. And with his damage, I've already kind of touched on it a bit. With Leper, you always have the potential of just popping off with Chop randomly. At the very end, you always want to swap Poet to Monarch, basically always, because this exists. It just gives him more max HP, and you get better damage, you get better speed. It's very, very good. And it's probably like a better tanking path compared to Poet if you are going against cosmic enemies. And obviously you get like Persian Intimidate, get the Vuln, just even more setup. And with this path, you don't lose any damage. So if you just like find in the final cultist fight against Exemplar, you just find like the cultist trinket that gives you like plus 66% crit. You are like, okay, I swap to Monarch, and I just like go into the fight. I probably have some form of combo on my team. I just combo the boss, Leper, go hit them, and then Leper crits them for 50. Huh? That's just Leper. That's basically Leper. You have probably the best tank, the best dedicated tank, definitely, in the game, up until you find your damage trinkets, and then you pop off and get like a big hit. And that's why Leper is so good. And building teams around Leper is not really that good, in my opinion. You don't really want that, because then you need to account for like Leper damage, all of that stuff. Just treat him like a dedicated tank. Just treat him like you would Carcass. And then Leper is really, really good. And when he pops off, you really want to have some form of utility to support him. And that's why Jester is also so good, because Jester fits on so many teams, and Jester existing makes Leper better. Because if you have Jester on your team, which is never a downside because Jester's insanely broken, it's like, okay, with Jester, I just like do my usual stuff. I like press my Encore, and then I play this like solo finale, or I just sit in the back, I press Fade to Black Razors with all of that stuff. And then it's like, okay, suddenly Leper is popping off. Okay, I unequip Finale, I unequip Solo, I upgrade Fade to Black, I upgrade Razors with, I dance in the back, and I apply insane amounts of combo for Leper. And then Leper is just fully supported. That's all the support Leper will ever need. And that's why Leper is so good right now. That's why I think you could maybe be A, because just of the circumstance that Jester is so insanely broken and should probably be on every team, just with Jester existing. And that makes Leper so much better. Obviously, he's not like the best, If you want someone in the front line who can also deal damage from the get-go, I wouldn't look to Leper. I would look towards someone like Flagellant, Crusader, Duelist, a frontliner like that instead of Leper. And if you want like a specific counter to like every fight, obviously you want Mad Arms instead of Leper. But if you just want a dedicated tank with the potential of like the huge damage pop off, and if you just run Jester on your team, then Leper is probably your choice. And that's why Leper is so good. He just takes all the damage, he takes all the stress, and then he recovers all of that. And that allows the rest of the team to just kind of like focus on dealing damage instead of like having to like worry about, oh yeah, I need to heal this fragile damage healer. You just press like one use of Solemnity and you probably heal more than you would with 4 turns of healing on like your more fragile characters. That's basically Leper. And that's why I think he's very good right now. If Jester gets tuned down and he doesn't just go on every team anymore, I think Leper will also kind of mellow out and be like just like a decent hero and like in B tier. But I think that's fine. The only change I would really like to see to Leper ever, I think he's in like the perfect spot right now, and I don't think he needs like huge balance changes. Like all 3 of his paths feel good. Wanderer also surprisingly feels very good. And the only change like he really needs is to the moves that just aren't good right now, which is Break, Ruin, Revenge, and Hew. And that's basically all the buffs he really needs, because all of those moves just don't do a lot right now. You would much rather just press like Intimidate or his other stuff instead of those, because they kind of try to do utility or big damage payoff, but they don't do it in a very good way. Like if these generated crit consistently, they would make him way better. Just like a big damage payoff for bosses, but it's just not right now. Like his damage, just focusing too much on Leper as like a damage dealer, I think is the biggest mistake with him. And I think he just kind of serves like the purpose of like, okay, you just sit there and eventually you maybe get good. And if you don't get good, you still get like a very, very good tank. And that's still worth something. And that's why I think Leper is probably A tier right now.
He's super fun and good and a good solid choice for a lot of teams. I just don't think he's like, again, the best hero. All right. The Man Arms. He's gone through a lot, right? He's had a rough couple weeks with the DLC coming out. Been nerfed to hell. Everybody said that he's terrible now. All of his abilities suck, and he's just crap and all that stuff. And I'm sorry, but I still think he's an S tier hero. I think with all the nerfs that he has gone through,
all the nerfs, bro. Have any of you actually looked at like the patch notes? Like the nerfs are barely anything. The only nerf that really exists is Retribution having an extra cooldown and losing the block. The other moves just don't. The other nerfs just don't matter. Like Bolster not being able to remove Vuln and Weaken. Okay, is that like a big deal? Was that ever a big deal? I don't think so. When I ran him, and I thought he was one of the best heroes, I didn't actually run Bolster. Very often I just didn't run Bolster because I ran just alongside him. So I didn't really need that extra stress healing from him. And yes, so many other moves that I think Bolster being slightly weaker isn't gonna change too much. Like the damage nerfs to Crush and Rampart. Come on now. Have you looked at the numbers? Do you know what the Crush range used to be? It used to be 4 to 7. And this used to be 5 to 8. And this used to be 3 to 6. And 4 to 7. No. That's not a nerf. That's the biggest cope nerf I've ever seen. That's like removing that's like removing 1 damage from Razor's Wit. Nobody cares. Like the damage nerf barely mattered. And the damage from Crush was never like the reason why he's so good. It was part of the reason, obviously, just having like a really good damage dealer in addition to everything else he offers. But like the healing is still there. The stun on this is still there. Like it didn't change anything. Like the Crush and the Rampart nerf didn't change him. The only thing that actually hurt him was the Retribution change. And if you lose Retribution slightly, because Retribution was never like the move you just used to like, oh yeah, I press it like so often and like I use this to like permaton. That was never the use for Retribution. It is weaker now, obviously. But because you aren't getting like the double riposte and you aren't getting the block on him anymore. But it's still incredible. You still press this every time it's off cooldown, and that's still enough. Like, you just have more time to press other stuff. And very often, you, on turn 3, when Retribution was up again, you kind of didn't want to press Retribution, because there was so many other things you could be doing, We're often just better than pressing retribution at that point. And that's why I think Man-Arms barely got hit. That's why I think S tiers are completely fair. And I think he should probably just remain there. He will probably remain there because he counters every fight. So unless we see some huge nerf to all of his utility, he's probably gonna stay up there. And even if his damage gets nerfed into the ground, where like to the point where Crush deals like 5 damage at max, where it's like, okay, Crush is dealing like 2 to 5 now. Okay, then maybe he goes down to A tier. But if that doesn't happen, like, and he keeps all his utility together, he just stays up at S tier. Like, he still counters every big fight in the game. He still has incredible survivability. And it's like, yeah, this guy hasn't moved at all. The nerf did nothing.
He's still outclassing so many other heroes at being able to do so many different things. Like, even with the retribution nerfs and the nerfs to his damage on Crush and Rampart, which, by the way, I don't really think are that big of a nerf. I think, in all honesty, it's almost negligible, the amount of damage. And Zero, or whoever, if you're listening to this, I mean, if you're going to take more damage from him, whatever. I still think he's amazing. I think he's well-rounded. He can heal himself. He can stress heal. Defender is an incredible ability. You know, his paths are just make him wonky good. Like, all of them have value without making, you know, and I still think he does suffer from those kinds of, like, Hero Plus paths. I think both his main paths, Bulwark and Vanguard, are like Hero Plus in just 2 different directions, and then there's Sergeant, which is still like a really solid path. Just like, okay, gonna go full support on him. You can play him in rank 4 and do full support, and he's incredible. Play him in rank 1, do a lot of damage, he's incredible. He can tank all that damage, and he can, between the fact that he can use like Defender and his, you know, taunt on Retribution, or if you're on Bulwark, the taunt from Standfast, like, you can pretty much just keep him tanking the entire time, even though you can't spam Retribution anymore. I just think he is still an S-class hero. Like, you can throw him on. He doesn't. I just don't feel like he really got nerfed. I just think it's like, okay, I can't click a button as often, but I still. Now I'm just gonna use Crush 1 round more. In all honesty, I'm probably just killing things faster than I was before because I'm not using, you know, Retribution as often. So, yeah, I think he's really good. I think he's a very, 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 very good hero. And I think on a scale of heroes, he stands at that S-class where he is truly like at the top, just like able to be on almost any team and make any team work really well. So I'm probably gonna get some hate on that one. A lot of people probably gonna say he's gone down.
Literally, if you want to like put the damage nerf into perspective, if you look at pre-nerf Sergeant with him with like the minus 20% damage, would you still say Sergeant is good? If you said yes and you said pre-nerf Sergeant was good, nothing changed. Like, then Man-at-Arms is still incredible right now. Like, his damage didn't change. Because this didn't really matter. Like, you could still play him, and it's like, he was still good. He obviously didn't have the insane damage of Vanguard, or the incredible control of Bulwark, but Sergeant was still good. So, like, he's still S tier. Like, and this is more than they nerfed him. Like, minus 20% damage is way worse than taking -1 to the max damage range. That's insane. Like, Man-Arms, if you say Man-Arms got like nerfed really hard, no, he did not. Brogard didn't get nerfed at all. Like, his damage didn't change. It's incredible. Like, Man-Arms, they didn't nerf him. They basically just said, okay, so maybe he is slightly worse at surviving, and you can press his damage button as well, I guess. Like, the damage is so minuscule. Like, the damage change is so irrelevant. Like, you really only got the retribution nerf, and the rest didn't matter. Like, that's how I see Man-Arms. Like, just look at it. If you said pre-nerf Sergeant was good, Man-Arms is still very good right now because Sergeant basically nerfed the damage harder than Red Hook did to Man-Arms.
Since the nerf, he may not be S+ class anymore, but yeah, I still think he's S class. And again, let's move on to the next hero.
You could still argue that Man-Arms is S+, to be honest. Like, you could still, like, honestly be, like, the best hero in the game. I've already had the stance that Jester is more broken than Man-Arms, because Jester does so much insane stuff. But I see the point that Man-Arms is the best hero in the game, and I still see it. Like, Man-Arms can still be the best hero in the game, just because of how much utility he offers, and how he counters every big fight in the game. Like, Man-Arms is still off the charts. If there was, like, an S+ tier here, which you could honestly do, there's Man-Arms, and there's Jester in there. because both of them are insanely broken.
Here, speaking of heroes that have had lots of changes recently, Occultist. Occultist has had a lot of changes in the past couple weeks, and all for the better, I would say. The malediction changes, binding shadow changes, overall, his curses getting updated, and a couple other tweaks to his kit. He has definitely become a better version of himself. He was always a good, or at least an okay hero. Now I would say he is a very, very good hero. I think he is solid at doing damage. He is solid at disruption. He is solid at debuffing the enemy. His curses feel really potent now. Malediction actually has a lot of value if you decide to use Malediction. The fact that he can do raw physical damage from rank 4 with Binding Shadows, yes, it doesn't pull you forward anymore, but in all honesty, I like that change more. I do think there's still some issues with his unchecked power system not feeling super amazing sometimes. But I think it's mostly been, like, I would say his ability that needs the most work probably still is Anamnesis. I think that ability still suffers even if you're on his aspirant path where it does like 150 plus damage. No, I wish I was doing that. 150% more damage. I still think he struggles overall with that ability. But other than that, like, all of his buttons generally feel good. I find myself using them a lot. Like, Weird Reconstruction is actually a good heal now. Like, I legitimately get a lot of very, very good value out of it, especially if I'm using his Ritualist Path and I'm using, if I've got like the Stagecoach item. Like, some of the heals you can get with him are just fantastic. And yes, he still suffers from the 0 crit bleeds and all that stuff. That's part of his character. That's part of I think just the charm of him, but it doesn't feel like it happens as often. And at least I can be a bit more proactive about healing with him now because of the threshold changes. So I'm going to throw Occultist up at A class. I think he is a solid choice now. I think he is in a really good place. I'm sure he could use some more tweaking, but if other heroes get balanced like him, we might have all A class heroes before we know it. So I think that was definitely some good changes on his end.
Yeah, that's just a fully based take, in my opinion. Occultist is, in my opinion, like the example for how heroes should be balanced and how heroes should. If every hero just gets balanced like Occultist, I wouldn't be mad. Like, his entire kit is viable, and there's 2 moves that just kind of feel which is Vuln Hex and Anamnesis. Like, both of these are still usable, and I find myself using Vuln Hex for like specific fights sometimes, but it's not as good as, say, Weakening Curse, because Weakening Curse just has that combo. So Vuln Hex just kind of falls to the wayside, and Anamnesis, obviously, it's a very good token clear, and like the split damage is good, but it's just like because it's still very low damage, and if you aren't getting like the full token clear value, which is pretty difficult to get because you have to press his Chaotic Offering on turn 1, then you have to like get Anamnesis on turn 2, and then maybe you get like full token clear value, but it's just Like, this needs a bit of tweaking, I think, but the rest of his kit feels incredible. Like, he barely needs any work. Like, all of his paths could just stay as is, in my opinion. Ritualist is good, Warlock is good, Aspirant is good. So, I don't know. Like, I don't think he needs any changes. And, like, except to, like, maybe Anamnesis and Vuln Hex. But even if they stay as is, I think he's probably the most balanced hero we ever had in the game. And that's why I think he's fine. I don't think he should ever be changed, and if they do change him, just target those 2 moves and don't nerf him. There's no reason to, in my opinion. Like, all of this is just fine. And A tier is completely fair. I don't think he's good enough for S. He's just a very flexible healer. I find myself using him the most from all of like the heroes that can heal, because he just fits on so many teams. And if you just don't know, okay, how much am I gonna move around and what do I need to like support? You just pick Occultist and just say, okay, yeah, it's probably good enough. Because with someone like PD, you want to be very safe with her because you can move her forward very well and she doesn't move very well in addition. And obviously you lose the heals sometimes. And with Legend, same thing. If you move him back too far, he loses a lot of value. And Vestal obviously needs a lot of support needs the party to be kind of built around her support. So Occultist just falls into that space where like he's the most flexible healer again, and you just offer support in addition to that, and it's just good stuff. And I think he's just perfect right now. I don't think you should ever change him.
Next, we're gonna go ahead and talk about Plague Doctor, and yeah, again, just another hero that's like she's really damn good. She works really well. All of her paths feel pretty good, I would say. But I mean, Alchemist is obviously her best path. Play grenade spam on Alchemist or whatever. Like, she, if anything, she needs to get the Man at Arms treatment. She needs to be kind of taken down a peg. I feel like her ability to just remove the back row from existence with her play grenades on Alchemist, especially if you get trinkets with it, it's just insane. And I don't mind, you know, characters getting to the point where they can steamroll things, but it's almost too easy to do with her. She just is so consistently good at that. I think Indiscriminate Science is still an outlier on the healing like spectrum right now that we've got going on in the game, where it's a non-limited, you know, non-battle limited ability that can heal for insane numbers, especially on her Surgeon path. And I think it might need some toning back. It might need some limitations or a bigger cooldown, because it is such a potent ability, especially when it's upgraded. It's such a great ability and so very cool, but it does need some work, I think, still. It's a bit on the struggle bus just because of the fact that it is truly too good at times. And I think that that's a bad thing, because it makes other heroes feel bad, and we'll talk about some of the things, in my opinion, that that's affecting as well. But yeah, I mean, even her Physician path, which is, I think it's a really fun path, her Physician path, because it's kind of like, again, it's a subclass. It's a dynamic play style change. It gives her more support abilities. I think it's a really fun path. I know a lot of people maybe don't like it. It's a bit underpowered, but when it does work for your team, it works really well, and I enjoy that, and I think that's what paths should be about. Maybe not like the meta or the optimal way to play her, but it's a fun path. So I honestly think right now she's kind of between S and A class for me. And I'm going to say that she's probably S class. I think she just works on so many teams. I think you can just completely lean on her for a lot of things. She can do good damage. She just heals your team fantastically and just has some really good support abilities with her. There's not many dead buttons with her, or any. Like,
yeah, I'm just gonna stop him right there and just kind of talk about my take on PD. I think PD is an A. She's a high A maybe, but I don't think she's S, and she's definitely not on a level like a Mad Dumps or Jester. I would say she's around the same level as Occultist, because she's just good. She's not super strong, I would say, because with her, what happens is that you have very low HP on Alchemist. I think you sit around 25 or something, maybe even lower, and you can, if you get shuffled, she's a huge downside. If you get caught in a bad spot with PD, there's no way she's living that. Like, she can so easily just die, and you can just lose like a Grand Slam run. And that's what I don't like about her, which is that she's very inconsistent. That's the reason why I always put her in A right now. Because for Alchemist, you are just inconsistent. And all of the healing is nice, but what very rarely happens, that you just get like in a fight, you just can't out-heal the damage. That very rarely happens. Unless your team is bad, you should usually be able to like control the enemies to a point where after turn 1, there's basically no chance of dying anymore. And the way you very often lose heroes in DD2 right now is just that you get shuffled, someone gets caught in a bad spot, and they get like double crit, and they fall over because they just got extremely focus fired. And PD doesn't help that. PD actually makes that issue kind of worse, because if she's in that bad spot, you have no healing probably, and she's not getting out, and she's so easy. If like one crit lands on her, she's dead. Like, she's on death's door, and then like another hit comes in and she just dies. And other heroes or other healers or backliners even just don't have that issue, because for someone like Grave Robber, at least you have the self recovery and you are fast enough that you can probably outspeed enemies. PD can't. Occultist, has a lot more HP, he can heal from anywhere, he's never out of position. Vestal has more HP, Crusader has more HP, Flagellant, obviously, and that's kind of like the issue with PD Alchemist, where it has always been that way, and that's why someone like Shuffle, even in like his earlier tier lists, kind of ranked PD in A, and I still think that applies, because she's just not tanky enough, and she doesn't have any defensive capabilities outside of Surge and Extra max HP, but it's just very risky to bring her sometimes. And I still think she's fine, just because of how strong her payoff is. And if like nothing goes wrong, she's very strong. And that's where I think he's coming from, putting it into S. If nothing goes wrong, yes, she's S. And she's probably like on the same level as Mad Arms. But she has that bit of inconsistency that I think pushes her down a bit. And her payoffs are basically just like a backline healer who also deals good damage. That's basically what she does. And I think that's a fine role to have. And I think right now she's actually balanced. I don't think she needs like a big buff or a big nerf. Because every healer right now, or like everybody who can heal, has like their own role, where PD is like the backline healer, Flagellant is like the frontline healer, Occultist is the flex healer, and then you have Vestal, which I'm gonna talk about a bit more when I get to her, because that's gonna be an in-depth segment. But aside from that, she doesn't offer like a whole lot of utility. I don't think I don't know what he's talking about with there are no dead buttons on PD. Does Orating Blast exist? And Boiling Vapors exist? Ounce of Prevention exists half the time. It's like some of them are just completely dead, and you'd never really want to equip them. There's never use for them. Ounce of Prevention has its uses, but like Emboldening Vapors, is Orating Blast really? Do they really have a place? I don't think so. That's kind of also why Physician has to exist, because this is like the only reason all of those paths are actually like semi-usable. And I don't think the damage payoff with her is too big, because if you just look at the other damage payoff that some of the heroes have, Flagellant, okay then, I'm just gonna like hit something, and then I get hit for 50. Okay, I press one button, I'm back to full HP. Oh, that's way better than just PD dealing a good amount of damage. And Occultist, same thing. I just pop Burning Stars for 80 on somebody. Yeah, PD can't pop 80 just by herself, just randomly with Burning Stars or something. You just can't do that. But Occultist can. Like 12 to 18, if this thing crits, you are already at 24 damage. And if you have like a Strength token, a Crit token, a Vuln token, which he can all apply by himself and ignores block, you can just pop Burning Stars for way more damage than PD can do with like multiple trinkets. That's why I think she's actually fair. If the only reason why I think you could argue that she is extremely good is Indiscriminate Science, because this allows you to remove all negative tokens. And if you really want to nerf her like a bit, or just tone her down a bit, I would say just change the remove all negative tokens to just remove like 2 negative tokens, or remove 3 negative tokens. That you don't just pop it and like all your negative tokens are gone, because that's very good. That's like the main reason why she's so strong and has always been so strong, because of Indiscriminate Science. But if she gets like a small nerf, I think she's gonna be like perfect in A tier. And or you could just increase the cooldown on this if you wanted to, but I think the only remove like 2 or 3 negative tokens is probably better. And I see the reason why you would put her in S tier. She's just reliable until she's not. And if you just stay in that lane where like you don't get shuffled, and it's like, okay, she just sits in the backline, she is probably like one of the best backliners in the game. But I don't think she's as broken and is like in need of like an emergency nerf like Mad Arms or Jester right now.
You know, Ounce of Prevention used to feel kind of like a dead button, but like when you get Ounce of Prevention value, it's incredible, especially on Physician. So yeah, I think overall she's probably S class. I would like her to be tuned a bit more towards that A class though, with some changes. And some people might hate me for that, but hey, that's what it's about. All right, Runaway, Boxcar Kid. Let's talk about her. She needs some help. I love Runaway. I think she has some really cool abilities. I think her character is amazing. I think her design is super cool. When she works well. But her kit needs some help. Hearthlight still feels weird. I know it's still got like token removal, and it like when you use it and you use it for like the right things, it feels really good. But it's still so niche. It just needs some character, in my opinion, as an ability. I think, you know, she's got Smokescreen Plus, which is like easily one of, if not the best debuff in the entire game. But like Searing Strike feels a little weird. You know, Ransack I generally just run more often because Disruption is better than a little bit of dot. The little bit of dot that gives, in my opinion, and it can even, you know, give some dot too. So like, yeah, Searing Strike it's a bit more direct, but you know, the Dragonfly plays are good. Orphan Runaway throwing from the back is, you know, just got some crazy numbers coming out there. But beyond that, I just think that she really needs some help. I think she's good at times, but struggling most of the time. Her Survivor path needs some help. Run and Hide feels like still like a really weird ability that's like you only click that when you're on Act 3 and you need that little bit of stealth. I think she definitely needs some help in the coming balances. I think her paths are probably where she could get a lot of that help. I think if she had some unique attributes to some of her abilities and some of her paths, that it wasn't just like stat stuff, which is really what I'm hoping for at the end of the day, is that a lot of these heroes that are in the old systems, their paths get changed to these more like ability changing paths instead of them just being, flat statistics, ups, downs, things like that. Because it adds so much character, like like Intermezzo adding bleed to certain abilities and things like that. I think she could definitely use some of that treatment. So I don't think she's D class, but I definitely think she's C class. I think she needs some help.
Yeah, I think that's fair. C is a very good place for her right now. He basically touched on every issue she has. It's just that she's not bad necessarily. It's just that, like, if you just look at like what she does, it's not bad what she does, which is basically just spamming Firefly and spamming Smokescreen. Both of these moves are very good. But the issue is that she lacks a lot of flexibility, because even if you equip 5 moves, you can't actually equip 5 moves you want to actually use every fight. Because you want Firefly, you want Smokescreen, you want Cauterize, and after that, like, Ransack is alright. And then, like, the last slot is like, what do you put there? Backdraft isn't great, Firestarter kind of isn't great, Dragonfly needs specific setup, and you kind of lose all your other options on turn 1, which isn't great. Controlled Burn is only good in specific fights. Hardlight is kind of just a token clear sometimes, and doesn't really feel good to press. Run Height is super situational, and Serum Strike is just bad. It's like, your 5th slot is never contested. There's nothing you want to put there. So, with Runaway, it's not that she needs to make her highs higher, because her highs are already high enough. You need to increase, like, the lows from her, because she has so many lows. And it's like, just buff some of her stuff, just make her more flexible. Just give something that isn't Smokescreen Firefly spam. Because this is like her best playstyle. Like, these 2 moves are incredible. But everything else is just not. And that's kind of why she is so bad right now and why she needs so much help. She just needs something else. And I think C tier is very fair for her. I don't think she belongs in D either, just because of how good Smokescreen and Firefly are already by themselves, and they pull so much weight. It's insane. It's like Battle with Jester in Darkest Dungeon 1, where like Battle was incredible, and like the rest of his kills was just kind of eh. And that's basically what's happening with her as well.
And yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Next, we got our boy Flag. I don't think this is a hard one to say. I think Flag is S-class. I think the dude carries if you have him on your team. Yes, you have to deal with death, but in all honesty, she's not that hard as long as you kind of go, road fight coming up, maybe I've got Flag on my team, let me take a stop, put some combat items on, think about how I might deal with death. If you plan for death to be something that arrives, she's pretty easy to deal with. Overall, the guy's just insane. More is a crazy ability. His self-healing is crazy. His ability to help others is crazy. He's got good damage over time output. His paths all feel very good. They're on the newer system, so they change the abilities to actually feel like different, swapping around and things like that. Toxic builds, if you want to go like Scourge or whatever and go straight into the toxic build, can, it's crazy bad for your relationships, but you know that going into it, and it feels crazy cool when the enemies are, you got a boss just blighting itself to death because they keep smacking him. There is, of course, the curse that comes with Flag, and that is the fact that DBR is absolutely a myth on the guy, and if he does hit DBR, or if he does hit Death's Door, he's going to die.
Don't let him hit Death's Door. It's not that difficult. Have you looked at the self-healing? Like, take a look at Scourge, Deathless. Alright. Self, heal 50%. This guy isn't dying. Like, if you let Flagellant, the guy with 50 base HP, who can heal himself for 50% just randomly, get to Death's Door, you are playing bad. I'm sorry. Like, that's not a Flag issue, that's just a skill issue. Like, Flagellant should never hit Death's Door.
But you know what? That's the risk you take with Flag, and I think overall he's just an incredible hero that just feels very good. I think some of his abilities maybe could use some tweaking, but I honestly don't even know if I can name any of them off the top of my head.
Oh, I can name 2. I can name 2 of them, actually. The first one is Fester. This move sucks. You remove one corpse and you get 6 damage in return. The other single corpse removal is Dead of Night on Grave Robber. You know what that does? Oh, you know, heal 50%, remove 1 stress, get 2 stealth. That's way better than, yup, ideal 5 blight. Yeah, no. And by the time you press this, most likely 2 enemies have already died. So this is barely getting any value. It's like you deal 5 blight sometimes, and it's just not good. If this targeted every corpse, I don't think it would be too broken. Because most of the time it just clears like 1 corpse or like maybe 2, and you get like a bigger payoff, and I think that's fine. I think if Fester just cleared every corpse would probably be completely fine. That and Necrosis. Necrosis is just not good. You need things to have Blight, and then you deal 3 to 6, and you heal 10% maybe. No. Literally no. You want like your Blight pops to be big payoffs. Like, you know, Sepsis on some ranks, or on some of his paths. It's like, yeah, it's just not good enough. And that, you can also say Suffer, which Suffer on a lot of paths is just kind of bad. But this can actually be quite nice on specific fights, so yeah. But Necrosis and Fester just not good.
I think all of his ability, like maybe Necrosis, if anything, but like corpse clearing is good. And if you're in a situation where you need corpse clearing, it's a good ability that has a good additional effect. Like even just the corpse clear by itself would probably be enough. So while it's not like his most potent ability, I don't know, being able to add Blight to a couple enemies at the same time, you know, if it's a middle corpse or something like that, is pretty good. So honestly, yeah, I'm going to stick with him being S-class. You can fight me on that one.
I don't think you need to fight someone of Legend S. I think it's fair. I don't think he's anywhere near as broken as Jester or Mad Arms. Those two are just like in a category of their own. But Flagellant, sure, you can say he's like the 3rd best hero. I wouldn't be too mad. I would be like, okay, yeah, I guess you are more a Flagellant guy instead of like a PD or later on Crusader type of guy. But I think he's like a fair pick for like the 3rd best hero. In my opinion, the hero ranking right now goes like Jester in 1, you have Mad Arms in 2, and you have probably Crusader in ranked in 3. Because Crusader does a lot, in my opinion. He's just so flexible. It's insane. And if you say Flagellant is like the 3rd best hero, fair. I would say like, okay, yeah, that seems like a good take. Because this guy has just insane self-recovery. He has insane tanking. He heals a lot. He heals decent amount of damage. Yeah, he just doesn't die. That's basically Flagellant. And Death is actually a pretty good fight, and you actually kind of want to get Death. Because Death gives you an above average trinket, I would say. And most of the time it's above average. Some of them are really bad, but some of them are really good, so, you know. But the main part of Death is that she gives you mastery. I think she always guarantees you at least 1 mastery. I think she even gives you 2. And yeah, that's very good. Just getting an extra source of mastery for picking a hero is pretty nice. And that's why I think Flagellant is actually really good. He doesn't have like the issue with being shuffled as much because he has decent movement. And if he's like out of position, you can usually press something. Usually if you have Undying equipped, you just press that and he's still fine. He's still doing something. He doesn't fit on every team, which is my argument for not being as good as Jester and Mad Arms, because these two fit on literally every team. Flagellant on dance teams can be kind of and that's basically the main reason. He just doesn't fit on some teams that want like a dedicated frontliner, or like some heroes that really sit in the front line basically all the time over him. Where, for example, you have someone like Leper in 1 and you want like fucking frontline Vessel to support him. Yeah, Flagellant can't be really brought on the team, right? But you can bring Mad Arms in 3, you can bring Jester there. Like, those are still fine. So that's why I think Flagellant isn't like as good as these other two, because they still fit on any team.
And here he is, Dismas. I guess my debate here is he S-class or is he A-class? And I think he's probably not S-class. And the reason I say that is the only thing he doesn't have going for him is that he doesn't have any self-sustain or stress heal or support abilities or anything like that. And that's like his class, right? That's like his point. He is S-class when it comes to dealing damage. But other than that, he's not good at anything else. So while he is an incredible hero and also very flexible, rank flexible, the damage he can put out, you can do melee, you can do ranged, you can, move him around, you can, steal tokens, you can do all this stuff. That's all very good. All of his buttons have a point and a time and a place. The only one that feels a little lackluster at times, I think, is take aim, but even then, it still has really good value in the sluice, in the sprawl. I mean, overall, it has really good value in a lot of places. I think that the only thing holding him back is that he just has nothing nothing external or support wise or anything else to him. He is a one-trick pony, which is damage. He is the best pony at that, but these other heroes who are up there, they all kind of in that S-class range, they all kind of do a lot of things, and they do all of those things really, 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 really well. Not just like a jack of all trades thing, and they're kind of mediocre at everything. They're really good at what they do in multiple things. So I'm gonna throw Dismas in A class. I know Chris is gonna come for me.
I think A is fair for Highwayman. Let me just swap to the hero you was talking about. Where is he? So Highwayman in Darkest Dungeon 1 is pretty much what you just described. He's just like a one-trick pony who only deals damage. Okay, yeah, joke's over. What was this guy talking about? Bro was onto nothing. Highwayman in DD2 is not like Highwayman in DD1. He's not just a damage dealer. In DD1 he was just that, but in DD2 he's not. Because in DD2 he has a surprisingly high amount of utility. It's not just like, oh yeah, you support someone else. That's not utility. Utility is stuff that helps against specific fights and kind of like slows the enemy down. It removes tokens. Stuff like that. And Highwayman is actually very good at that. First off, he has a lot of execute stuff. Like he has execute on Wicked Slice, he has execute on Double Tap Plus, he has essentially execute on Open Vein. But then his actual utility comes in with Highway Robbery. Highway Robbery is a really good utility move. This is probably one of the best utility moves in the game because it steals 2 positive tokens. The only other way you can really remove offensive tokens, especially crit tokens, is very specific interactions that just specifically mention a crit token, like Bellow or Crusader Stunning Blow Plus, stuff like that. But the only other way to just remove positive tokens, like specifically positive tokens, all of them, is Confessor Illumination. This removes positive tokens. No other move does this, except for Illumination and Highway Robbery. No other move just removes like, yup, any positive token, I'm gonna take that. No other hero does that. And that's what makes this move so insanely good, because if like one of the cultist witches has a crit token, okay then, I'm gonna take that. And this alone gives him enough utility to already be good, but he also has a lot of other stuff, like Double Cross can be decent. He has a lot of that killing, obviously, like just execute and like the bleed, and I think that's good enough. And sometimes even tracking shot for a very specific act boss, tracking shot can be very good and essentially skips the full phase. And he has a lot of token clear as well. He has cleave, a decent cleave and grape shot blast, and he has repose from duelist advance, so he's really good at dealing both damage, and he also has a bit of utility. And that's why I don't agree with this. I agree with Reg, he should be an A, but not because he's just a one-trick good damage dealer, it's because he's a decent damage dealer, and also has a good amount of utility. And the damage part, I don't think Harriman is actually a very good damage dealer. I don't think that. Obviously, if you just think of like damage dealer in a void, who do you think of? Who's the best one? Obviously Highwayman. But the issue is, Darkest Dungeon, you don't play it in a void. You have 4 heroes that work together. So if you look at someone like Leper, you wouldn't say like Leper has better damage than Highwayman in a void, because that's stupid. But if you look at Leper in the context of how he works and how 3 other heroes exist and how he scales, he has so much higher damage potential than Highwayman. If you get a good Leper run, that's gonna outclass the best Highwayman run. And that's why Highwayman just kind of struggles in terms of like just dealing damage, because of a lot of other heroes just deal damage while also providing utility alongside that damage. And that's why he really needed Take Aim to be that good, to be relevant and be S tier, because then you had a extremely good damage dealer who was just extremely consistent because crit tokens are just the best. And you get a speed token, and you just like press a button, and it's like, okay, I go first next turn, aka I lose 0 tempo, and I one tap something. That's what made TA game so good. But now you don't get that anymore. You don't get that guaranteed outspeed anymore, so it's less consistent. And that's what kind of made him a lot worse as a damage dealer, because earlier you could say, okay, yeah, the best Highwayman run is probably better than like the average Leper run, because you still deal very good damage, and it's just extremely consistent. But now it's not as consistent anymore, and that's why I think he has kind of fallen as like just a pure damage dealer. If he had 0 utility, he would be like a B tier hero now. Even with old Tegam, I think he would only be A tier. But because he has all of that extra utility, he's S tier. Or he was S tier. Now he lost a bit of damage and a bit of consistency with the lack of the speed token. So I would say he's A tier. And I think that's fair. But calling him just like a one-trick pony is not a thing. Like, he has so much utility. Oh yeah, and I forgot to talk about Pistol Shot. Stun against combo targets. Yeah. This is very good, obviously. You can't really get combo into the backline so easily. It's only possible with a few heroes, especially against rank 4. So that's a bit difficult. But this is still incredible. Like, Pistol Shot upgraded is one of the best moves in the game, just because of the stun. And it also deals good damage, and because he has access to crit tokens, he can just let someone else set up on turn 1 while he presses take aim. And turn 2, he just presses Pistol Shot on that target, deals good damage, and stuns them with a higher chance because of that crit token giving him crit, which obviously increases his crit, or the chance of his secondary effects, aka stun, sticking by 20%. So that's why I think he's A tier. It's not because of his damage, it's really because of his combination of damage and utility. Because in terms of just damage, he's very easily outclassed by a lot of other heroes that just focus a lot more on dealing damage. And they obviously have other downside and they need to scale, but it's very easy to hit that scaling, and that kind of means that his damage is only very good in the very early part of the run until you find that scaling, which is not that difficult.
Probably gonna cancel me. But it's time to talk about Junior. And I don't think Junior's in a good place.
Just to preface this is probably a worse take than Jester, but I'm not. And the last time I made this video, I talked about Vestal for like half an hour, so that was very fun. I'm gonna try to keep myself quick here, but just know that this take right here, I don't agree with at all. And if I just make a weird cut here, it's because I talked about Vestal for way too long already.
Right now, personally, if we're gonna put the scale of heroes here, we're gonna have the S-Class just being those crazy good heroes. I'm sorry I had to do this, but I think Junia is a D-class hero right now. I think everybody was, and I know I was, super excited when she came to the game. I think that she has some very cool ideas. I actually really like her conviction system and the fact that she does feel more fun to play than she did in Darkest Dungeon 1. I don't hit the same 3 abilities over and over and over again, generally. But I think she just doesn't feel great. I think when we look at all these other heroes, like, I don't know where Junia fits in a lot of the times. Like, her mantra is an interesting ability, and I think mantra is kind of this whole like idea of like having like an ability that changes on all of her paths, but it only really feels good on Seraph. There's maybe some plays for it on Chaplain with the whole guard healing thing, but the heal is so weak. It's so weak for what it is. And Divine Grace just feels like a really, really weird heal, in my opinion. Like, it doesn't feel good, especially compared to all the other heals that we currently have in the game. Like Weird Reconstruction, Battlefield Medicine, Indiscriminate Science, and even Battle Heal now. Like, Divine Grace just feels like a weird one to me. And I'm struggling with that, you know? And, you know, she's got Divine Comfort. She's got her Seraph path, which is, like, crazy good. Don't get me wrong. She can put out really good damage with Judgment. But again, the whole, like, having to wait, like, you know, a multiple amount of turns, you know, whatever the case is, you have to get that set up and things like that. And that's not a bad thing. Like, heroes requiring setup, especially, like, she's a healer, and if she wants to do really good damage, then you kind of have to, you know, build that setup. But, like, I don't know. It's something in me has just kind of got that feeling with her, and when I put her on a team, I just don't have a lot of excitement for her being on the team, and I think that's where I struggle. Like Hand of Light feels like a really weird ability outside of Confessor, where it has that AOE kind of cleave ability and stacks. It puts those weakness tokens down, and I think that she just needs some help. I think she needs some tweaking to really give her identity and her character back, and which I don't know if she ever really had. I think again, I was super excited when she joined, but been struggling overall, I think, with placing her. So I think she's gonna be the hero that kind of.
No, I'm kidding. um, but yeah, I've already said like this is a very bad take. The issue that I have seen a lot of people have with Vestal is that they just play her in the back rank and they just like sit there and spam like her stuff and try to use her like a heavy healer. And that's not her playstyle, in my opinion. She's not supposed to be a healer, and that's not why I have made her work the best. The way I've made her work the best is actually just being in the front line. With a not Chaplain, do not use Chaplain. Chaplain sucks balls. Like, this path, don't. Just don't. It nerfs your hero. It makes her consecration or her conviction tokens harder to get. This is a terrible buff, because nobody cares about stuns and moves are not that big a deal for her. Hand of Light is not that good. Mantra is a big nerf because you need basically Mad Arms to actually make it work. And Sanctuary gets nerfed because you lose the stress heal for 1 extra guard token and 1 extra block plus token. So all of her stuff becomes extremely inconsistent because you have to get the right enemy RNG. And this Mantra being like not guaranteed healing is terrible. And you have Seraph. Seraph is obviously very good. You already talked about this. But do try Seraph in the front line. It's probably not the best there. I think Confessor front line is incredible, but I'm gonna get to that in a second. Because Seraph in the front line is still fine. You still keep a lot of stuff, and you can just use Hand of Light, Illumination, and like the 2 consecrations in the front, and just be in the front line. And use Divine Comfort as your only healing. That's what I think is the best Vestal playstyle, because she can't compete with the other healers. Like, not at all. Like, PD, backline, she's not getting in the backline ever, because have you looked at PD healing and PD damage? Yeah. Very hard to outclass that with Vestal. Frontline, she's not getting the survivability that Fledgland has, and so she's not really a frontline healer. She doesn't have the flexibility of Occultist, so where is she? So my opinion on her is that she's not a healer. She's not like, just literally don't run Divine Grace. Just don't. Literally drop Divine Grace, use a Crusader Vestal setup, because Crusader really helps her with her healing, or just use Fledgland Vestal. Something like that. That's a lot better. And just have her in the front line, because all of her consecrations on any path can be used from anywhere. So you can use them from the front line and just still get all of those buffs. And especially with Confessor, because Confessor Hand of Light is a huge token clear. Just clearing like the front 2 tokens is already good, but upgraded adds Weaken, which is pretty nice. And you have Illumination for great token clear, and Mantra, obviously you lose that, but you still keep both your consecrations. You have Hand of Light, Illumination, and then at the last slot you can either use Mace Bash, you can use Sanctuary for more tanking, or you can use Divine Comfort. So I think that's a lot more flexible, and it allows you to do a lot more stuff, and have a lot more of a niche, compared to like just being a backline healer that's outclassed by PD in basically every scenario. So I think she belongs in that like mid-range, where she can press most of her stuff and still provide a lot of support. And I think that's why she is really good, because if you look at her HP, 41 is pretty good, so she can actually stay in the front a lot better than someone like Occultist, who has a lot lower HP, who has only 31. And that 10 HP difference is a lot. So that's why I think about Vestal. I'm not going to talk about her more here, because the video is already long enough, but just try Vestal in the front line, or in the mid-range, where you have like a dancer behind her to push her back in case you do need the extra healing from like Grace. And she's not starting for movesets that much that you need to like, you need to like unequip Grace because you aren't actually using it, but you can swap around a lot of moves with her depending on your situation, and I think that's what makes her strong. That she's like the support that also has a heal. This is very much just like Occultist in DD1, where it's not like he's a healer first and like a supporter second, but he's a supporter first and a healer second. And I think that's Vestal in DD2. And that's how she works best.
Evens out the scale here as far as our S-class heroes, but it's rough, man. I think it's really rough, and I
guess for ranking, I would put her at B, or low B, maybe high C. The reason for that is that the playset is very difficult to make work, and it is one of the higher skill ceiling, and I'm pretty sure I still haven't even scratched the surface of how to actually play Vestal. And there's a lot of nuance to her, and I just think that she needs more time. And I don't think she should be changed right now. I think that would be a bit premature. You could obviously like change her backline stuff to be better, but for that mid-range style, just leave it as is, because there's a lot to be discovered there, and I still think that that's probably going to be a development that's going to come in a few months, or maybe even a year. It took a long time for me to actually say, okay, Vestal is actually really good in the front line, but it comes with time. You just have to play her, and maybe there will be some great discovery for like a strategy with her, but there's a lot of stuff left to her that we still have to like actually learn, in my opinion. There's so much stuff.
I really want her to get some love, because yeah, she's just not feeling great for me. So is what it is. I'm gonna do this in this order here. So next we have Sahar. We have our new hero, Binding Blade DLC hero, Sahar the Duelist, the most complex hero in the game right now, with the most convoluted path system available to us, with stances and stance passives, and almost every one of her abilities having multiple effects depending on which stance she is in. I love Sahar. She is complicated in the best ways, in my opinion. But I am finding the more that I play her, and this may change as I get to see her a bit more, I'm finding myself playing into the same, like, loops where I just click the same 3 buttons over and over and over again because they're really, really good. And they just set her up to either just do a lot of damage or riposte a lot of damage and ignore a lot of damage. It's like meditation into like touche or flesh into disengage into meditation again. Like just all this like just stacking the dodge. Like yes, she has some like, oh, I could like ignore block tokens with feint or sort of flick or dodge tokens. And yes, I can do her Instructrice path to like get those, all that other stuff going on. I can do stress healing. She has a lot of other ways that you can play her, and I think I will probably change my feelings on her as we kind of go. But right now, I think that she maybe suffers from being too complex. A lot of players, including myself, are kind of just getting into a rhythm with her. So my caveat here, my asterisk is, I think she is a really good hero. I think she will get better over time, but not because she's going to get changed, but because we're going to find better ways to play her. And I want to give her I don't want to say that she's just an incredible hero because she's new. She's amazing, great animations, super cool concept, but I think she's B class right now. I definitely see her stepping up into like...
Alright, so what he talked about and how he played her makes sense. If you just play her as a damage dealer, I think B is completely fair. She's not great as a damage dealer, because Wanderer and Intrepid very much focus on like setting up Flash. Her move forward, this thing. And if you set this up, you have to directly compare to Grave Robber and Night Swan. Because if you look at Night Swan, okay, Grave Robber up right here, okay. If you look at Night Swan, Lunge is just a better version, because you deal 7 to 13 to the first 3 ranks, you get plus 50% damage, and you ignore all of this, and Stealth is more consistent than Dodge. And that's why Flash will never compare. And that's why Flash, as like your main damage focus, is never gonna work. And how other stuff doesn't help, because Touche has 5 to 7 damage, which is actually pretty good, and can be used from anywhere, but it has terrible reach. And if you just want like a frontline hitter, you have to compare to Leper, you have to compare to Crusader, who all do more damage than this, or have extra utility. So the movement on Touche just feels bad. Like Instructrice doesn't change it, Intrepid doesn't change it. So Touche is just kind of like a bad damage move. Feint doesn't deal great damage, and her post isn't extremely high value. It doesn't deal a lot of damage. You can see 4 to 7. That's not great. Even if you get 2 of them, that's 8 to 14. And you need to get hit twice. And that's not great. Because if you look at her HP, yeah, 20 HP is not good for someone who wants to get targeted this much. So you don't really want to get hit too much. So it's like a lot of her stuff just needs so much setup to get a good amount of payoff. And it's just not worth it. So disengage is like the only highlights of like the damage path are actually like her utility. Because in addition to all of the damage, she has really good utility. And like disengage is incredible on basically every path. And prep is a great setup tool just because of the speed token and not the strength token. And a lot of this stuff is nice, but her damage path is never going to be better than Nightswan Grave Robber, I think. Because Grave Robber just has more ways to recover. Grave Robber has a better defensive mechanic, which is stealth, compared to dodge. And if you look at the speed and look at this, you have to get missed first. You get plus 20% damage, and you take 40% extra damage. You have to dodge 3 attacks to get plus 60% damage and deal about the same damage as Lunge from Grave Robber after you pressed Fade once. And at the same time, and just the chance for this, without any mastery and just normal dodge, you have to dodge once, 50%, a second time, 25%, a third time, 12.5%. You have a 12% chance to get the same upside as Grave Robber pressing Fade once, which is guaranteed. Huh? And then the second part, I didn't even talk about this yet. You get plus 120% damage received on someone who has 28 HP. Literally, basically, the fucking Tangle soldiers can probably one-tap you with a crit. That's insane. And especially because all of these effects are lost when you are damaged. And damage can be anything. Self-damage, can be damage over time. And if you get a damage over time, it ticks 3 times, which means for the next 3 turns, you are getting 0 buffs. There's nothing. That's why Intrepid is so bad. Like, literally, don't run Intrepid. Like, all of this does nothing. Like, all this stuff that adds just makes her worse Grave Robber. And basically the same thing with Wanderer. Wanderer not so much, because it doesn't actually nerf her. Unlike, this. It actually tries to be decent, because it focuses more on Repose, which I think is actually fine. But, again, focusing on Repose with her pretty bad damage and no defensive tokens from, like, all of her Repose gain, which either you have to use Feint, which gives you 0 defensive advantage, and 2 to 4 damage against the front 2 ranks isn't great. It's just that token clear, basically. And then you look at, like, her other way to gain Repose, which is Meditation. It's like you need to have setup for that. And then you get defensive tokens, and then you get Taunt. Or you get the other thing, and then it's not consistent. It's always been the issue with Repose that you really want Taunt. And you can look at the other Repose moves. Like, the only one that's actually been used is Retribution, and that's because it generates Taunt. Like, who cares about Duel's Advance on Highwayman? Who uses this? Like, who? Nobody. Because it sucks. Because you don't want to use Duel's Advance. There's better ways or better stuff to do with Highwayman than basically clearing 1 token and getting Repose that triggers sometimes. And even if you see someone like run Rogue, they probably don't even want to run Duelist Advance. They just use it as a token clear, and if you could, you would much rather just have like someone else, like Jester, supporting you to use point blank shot multiple times. Because that's just better. And that's basically why Repose right now just isn't great. Because the only option where it's really good has Taunt, and you really want Taunt to make it work. And that's why Meditation right now I don't see it. And I don't like Wanderer because it focuses so much on Repose, which just isn't good. And Repeat is just not good because it's so inconsistent. And then there's the 2 other paths, Instructrice. He didn't talk about this at all for some reason, but he mentioned it earlier. This path is actually something where I think this has the most potential to be very good. Because this generates a crit token, and this gives an extra turn when mastered. And that's probably where she comes in, because that allows her to be basically Vestal, but more on the backline and really focus on that support. It is essentially what Intermezzo Jester tries to be. And that's what I think is like where you can improve a lot, because there you really need to find like a good team to make her work. And otherwise it's just not that great. But this is like my real opinion on her. She's probably high A tier, maybe even S tier. And that's because Antagoniste exists. Antagoniste is by far her best path, and it does so much. It's insane how good this path is. It takes basically all of her damage and throws it out the window because you want to focus on your utility more. And her utility is insane on this path. It's actually incredible that he didn't talk about this. And this is like one of the biggest messes in this video. Touché gets to hit rank 3, obviously loses damage, but you start dealing crush damage. 4 to 5 is slightly lower than crush damage. If you just look at like the base crush damage, it's actually 4 to 6. So this is slightly lower. But when it's upgraded, it's 5 to 7. And if you look at crush damage upgraded, I have this twice open. It's also 5 to 7. But Touché has the advantage, it has this secondary utility, which allows it to actually do something other than like just damage. It can be used from more ranks, because it can be used from rank 3. And when it's upgraded, it's actually a setup move for yourself, because it gives you a stance. So Touché is incredible on this path. Then you have Disengage. Disengage is still probably a best opener, because the wiki is still tripping. I didn't fix this. I wanted to fix this yesterday, but I didn't, because I got lazy. But Disengage is your setup move for until you find Mastery, because it puts you into defensive stance. And this path really, really wants to be in defensive stance. Because Disengage gives you a dodge, it ignores repulse, it sometimes applies combo, but the real money from this comes when it's upgraded. Up until it's upgraded, it's really just like a good opener and a setup tool. But when it's upgraded, you get to apply double blind to a combo target when you are in defensive stance. This is also wrong. Holy shit. But it allows you to apply 2 blind to any target. And this doesn't have a cooldown. So if you just apply enough combo, this can just permablind something. And not even permablind. This can permablind someone with 2 actions. That's insane. We've never had this in the game. Like, the only way to permablind is basically Jester with Fade to Black and Runaway Smokescreen. And now we have Duelist, who can permablind a double action target with Disengage, plus if the target is permanently comboed. That's insane. And you still keep all of your setup, you still keep good damage. 5 to 6 is still solid. Because look at crush damage. Again, 5 to 7. You deal 5 to 6. That's still decent. Because you also ignore this, you also get a defensive token, you also set yourself up. It's incredible. And then you have the boot, which is like one of the moves I haven't actually used too much, because there's so much other stuff you want to do. But it gives you a knockback, and it also gets a stun on target. This doesn't need an upgrade. That's exactly one other stun in the game that doesn't need an upgrade to actually happen. And that's Stunning Blow on Crusader. Every other stun that you can get requires either Bounty Hunter, or it requires a Mastery Point. The boot doesn't. And that's a huge upside. And when upgraded, it also applies combo when you are in offensive stance, and like obviously all of that. But now we get to the main point why I think Duelist is actually very, very good. And that's Coup de Grace on Antagoniste. If you just look at this unupgraded, it's just like, okay, you deal 1 to 2 damage, which I guess clears a token. It adds a lot of good tokens, like double weaken, double wound, which is pretty good, but it requires like offensive stance, which is pretty hard to get into, because the only way you can get into this with Antagoniste is actually if you have Touché in the back, or if you use Prep, or if you use Flash. And none of these options really feel good, right? And Flash Touché needs like an upgrade, so that's not really an option, right? But when you master this, this becomes insane instantly. This is probably one of the highest impact moves you can upgrade at the first in, and you should always upgrade this. Because when you are in defensive stance, this is also wrong. If you are in defensive stance, you add 1 stun. And this targets 2 to 4. You need no other setup. It's incredibly hard to prevent, because you need to like specifically stop her. And you can just press this multiple times per fight, because it's only a 2-turn cooldown. And this stuns rank 4. The only other 2 rank 4 stuns, or I guess kind of, usually need a lot more setup. Like with Occultist, you have to use both a Mastery Point, and you have to use Chaotic Offering. And with Highwayman, you have to apply combo to rank 4 somehow, which is not really that easy. And then you have Bounty Hunter, who obviously like just gets to stun rank 4. But this can be used from anywhere. It's so flexible. It's insanely good. Like, please. With her, the playstyle early on, before you get like all your mastery, is pretty much just you press Disengage on whatever token you want to clear. And then next turn, you press Mastered Coup de Grace, and you just stun something. That's the playstyle. It's very, very good. And after that, when you get more mastery, you can upgrade to Shea to deal even more damage when you set up, and you don't need to move around now. And then you also keep all of your other stuff. You still keep the great damage or like the decent damage from Flash. So if you just realize, okay, I need a bit more damage, you can just press Flash. Flash is still as good as on the other paths. So you can just press Antagoniste or just play Antagoniste and just be like, okay, so I want to do Disengage into Coup de Grace as like my opener. And after that, I just basically swap ideas and I just start dealing damage. That's also fine, because this setup requires 1 mastery point and 2 moves. And you still have 3 other moves that are completely customizable. I like to run Touché because of the reach, and I really like to run Flash to move myself back because I'm pressing Disengage so much, and I like Feint because I want Riposte. But you can do so much with her, and if you just go of these 2 core moves, you can build so much. It's insane that he missed this. Like, Disengage into Coup de Grace Plus is one of the best 2-move combos in the game right now, and I recommend anyone to just try this. Antagoniste is probably a best path just because of this combo. And there's so much else to find out with her, but this is probably the easiest path to pick up, because Instructease is hard because you need to like build a team around it, and that's pretty difficult. But Antagoniste, you can just pick this up because you basically ignore both the entire stance bonus, and you just have a consistent opener that's extremely high value with Disengage into Coup de Grace. And that way your first 2 turns are already planned out, and that way you can just like play the past turns a lot easier because you aren't pressed so much for like getting max value right now, because 4 enemies are hitting you in the face. And like, this is incredible. Please just try it.
Like A class, maybe not S class, but definitely A class as I get more comfortable with her. So that's really on me, not on her. But I think that's fair. I think she's a really good hero. I don't think she really suffers from like anything super negative. It's just her complexity. And so I don't want to pretend like she's amazing when I don't really know how to play her the best ways yet. So that finally brings us to our good old boy, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Reynold the Crusader. And we're gonna put him into S+ class. No, he's good. He's fun. He's solid. He works in a lot of things. I found that he is actually a better support than a damage dealer, which is kind of an interesting thing. Whether that support is through like his healing and buffs, or his tanking and regen, like spreading and healing and things like that. His damage dealing is okay. It's pretty good. His like execution abilities on like aggressor and things like that. The more I play him, the more I just think that he's really good, but he's not like amazing. And that's fine. He's kind of always been that way. Like, even in DD1, I don't think he was ever like amazing. I think he was just a really good choice a lot of the time, and he can fit in any rank, and I think he just does a lot of things good. And yeah, so while I think that a lot of people might want to put him higher because he is Reynold and he's incredible and like super cool looking, and we love Ray and all that stuff, I think he's just a B class hero, and I honestly kind of see him staying there, and almost on purpose. I think he's not meant to shine crazy. He's meant to help others shine and to fill roles that need filling. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to put him.
In my opinion, Crusader's a lot better than that. He's probably an A tier, lower A tier, I would say. So B tier is probably fine. Very high B tier in my opinion, but still. With him, it's more that like his paths don't do anything, and like you just want to play Wanderer basically every time because Wanderer is his best path in my opinion, whereas the other 3 just kind of suck. The reason why I really like this guy is just Stunning Blow. Easy advice I can give to like picking up Crusader is just you want to press Stunning Blow on a combo target as much as possible. Yeah. And aside from that, he's just doing Crusader stuff he's always been doing, which is Inspiring Cry, great stress heal. You have Battle Heal, which is just a good heal. You have Bulwark of Faith, which is a really good taunt now. And yeah, that's basically just what he does. That's what he's always done, which is he deals decent damage. He has at least some form of other utility, which is in this case a Stunning Blow. And then he has a good heal and a good stress heal. And that's basically what he does. He just has like decent utility in Bulwark of Faith, his stun. He deals decent damage with Smite or Reap, depending on what you want. And then he has good utility with Battle Heal and Inspiring Cry. What I find with him is that a lot of his moves just kind of suck. Zealous on like Wanderer is not good. Basically, unless you play Banneret, Zealous isn't great. Rallying Cry is kind of situational. Reap, Smite basically just do the same thing. And unless you upgrade Reap, then it's actually pretty decent. But that's why also I like Wanderer. And Holy Lance just kind of falls to the wayside because Crusader really wants to have those 5 moves. Radiance is a slow buff. Tenacity is a very slow buff. So both of these just kind of suck. And the pattern with all his pairs are you basically change like 3 moves. Unless you are Banneret, but like these 2 just change like 3 moves. And this is very bad in my opinion. Aggressor's issue is that it makes Smite and Reap extremely similar, which just means you have 2 moves that just do the same thing. And Tenacity is not a buff. I don't care about this. This is just like a very slow buff again, so I'm not gonna press this. Crusader can just be pressing Stunning Blow. So that's why I actually prefer Wanderer over Aggressor, because Smite is just a good damage. It's really high single target damage, because this is dealing plus 50% damage against mark targets. And Reap is also a solid second, an alternative. It's not like an upgrade or like both do the same thing. It's both do different things. Because Smite is just single target damage, while Reap is a more recovery focused thing. Because this allows you to heal 15%, and if you have 2 combo targets in the front, you heal 30%, which is really, really good. Because he has a lot of HP, so that's a big heal. And if you look at Man at Arms, you have Crush, which just heals 20%, and that's already healing quite a lot. So you essentially have a different version of Crush that has potentially more payoff, but obviously has worse reach. So that's basically what Reap is. And Smite just fits alongside it. You can run both of these, in my opinion, and just still be fine. So that's why I prefer Wanderer over Aggressor, because Aggressor changes nothing and just makes 2 moves basically the same thing. And I don't like that. And Templar is very similar, where it's just like, okay, Smite deals less damage now. And instead you get stress healing. You always want to have this little move called Inspiring Cry equipped, which already gives you stress healing. You don't need more of that. Especially because this upgraded stress healing always heals himself by 1 stress, so he can take care of his own stress really, really well. So you don't actually need the extra stress healing from Smite very often. You just prefer the extra damage. And Rallying Cry, again, is just a very slow move that, like, the second part doesn't matter, and it's only really a guard. And Crusader already has so much other stuff that he doesn't really need a guard, to be honest. I think he already has all 5 of his moveslots filled very well, and he would prefer a lot of other stuff over just like a guard. And Tenacity, again, is just very slow. It's just not that great. And lastly, we have Banneret. This is obviously a different playstyle, so you can't really judge it against the others, so I simply won't. And because of that, a lot of his stuff in here gets a lot better. Battle Heal becomes usable for anywhere, which is extremely nice. Just flexibility. Rallying Cry is nice because it's a full party mobilize, which can be very helpful. And Tenacity is also good utility just because it removes stun and daze on everybody. So Banneret actually gets a lot of extra utility and doesn't really change his base playstyle. And a funny part, which I really like, is that you just use Banneret in the front line. Like, none of this says you have to be in the back line, except Zealous. And just don't run him in the back line. Just run him in the front line. Just use Stunning Blow Smite. That's still fine. And I'm kind of still on that stage where I don't know if I prefer the Battle Heal on this version and Rallying Cry and Tenacity of this version, or do I prefer the Wanderer version of those moves. But I think, like, Aggressor Templar just straight up nerf Smite, and I don't like that. So that's why I don't do that. And because of that, I think my experience with Crusader is a lot different, because Wanderer Crusader and Frontline Banneret Crusader aren't something a lot of people have tried yet. So that's why I think Crusader is so low on his tier list. And I think that's completely fine. But I think Frontline Crusader is just the way to go in DD1. And just don't do the backline stuff. Sure, you get the extra reach, but you don't really care about damage with this guy in DD2 that much. Because sitting in the front line and just pressing all of your taunt and all of your utility in the front is just a lot better, in my opinion. So in my opinion, he's A tier, just because of he gets good damage, he gets a stun, it doesn't need mastery to actually work, he gets good healing, he gets good stress healing, he gets good taunting, he gets good otherwise utility for specific fights, so yeah. and that's just enough to put him into A tier, in my opinion. He doesn't fit on every team, obviously, but that's why he's not an S tier, and he isn't super broken in one aspect that he also gets into S tier, but he's very good. And that's why I think A tier is fine for him. I don't actually want to like see reworks to Wanderer or Banneret. The reworks I want to see is Aggressor and Templar actually going hard on their own gimmick, because a self-sufficient defender, where's his self-healing? Where's my self-healing? Where's my self-sufficient? I still need to be healed. Huh? And it's just not that good. And if you just want Templar, you can just pick Wanderer and get better damage from Smite, because you already have self-stress healing. So it's like, bro. And Aggressor is just like a frontline fighter who cleanses and slays with Holy Fire. Okay then, why do you care about Execute on Burn? You already have Execute by burning. Who cares? Literally, who cares? So that's why this, I think Wanderer is probably the best frontline path right now, because I haven't tried Banneret too much yet. But like Templar, Aggressor, just don't do them. They kind of suck. So yeah, but that's my take on the stuff. The video is already long enough. It's 2 hours, so I'm just gonna set a cut here. And I hope you at least enjoyed this somehow. I hope you learned at least a bit new, at least a few new things about Duelist and Crusader, and especially Vestal, and you kind of try those playstyles, and just go try them and see if you have the same experience as me. And if you don't, that's fair. Just tell me in the comments. I need the interaction. Yeah. But you know, and I'm just gonna continue seeing. I still think I have a lot of uncovered stuff, and I just haven't seen anything from especially Vestal, Banneret Frontline Crusader, and even the Instructees Duelist. But I think Antagoniste is just gonna be like my favorite on her. But yeah, hope you had a good time. Like, subscribe, who cares? Obviously check out British Bet. And thanks for making this video so I can steal it and shit on him, because he's a low skill player. Limao, skill issue. But yeah, have a good day.